So warm welcome to everyone. Welcome to yet another edition of CREDAI MCHI Knowledge Series. Today we're going to discuss a very interesting topic of private equity. Billions of dollars have literally come in our sector in form of private equity even during the pandemic, contrary to what most were thinking. And it's an extremely exciting topic where a lot of developers have received private equity. Today we will understand from Shobhit Agarwal sir, what are the kind of transactions that are happening, what is the flavor, what private equity people look for, and then in detail, we have our key speaker, Shri Gautam Ahuja ji, who will explain, his success case study of having a foreign partner, what were the things that they were looking for, and how did the integration happen. We are extremely delighted to have you all over here. On this note, I would welcome our president, Shri Deepak Goradia ji, to say a few words and address the audience.
Good evening, panelists, Shobhit and Gautam, and our guest, I think Amit Joshi is joined, and we have the President-elect and Secretary and Harshul. Welcome all members who will join today. It's a very, very interesting session today, where we have two key players who are into the business, where we would be definitely wanting to know and learn from them. How do we scale the business? And to scale the business, the only option is a funds. Availability of funds at various levels. It could be debt, it could be equity, it could be merger, it could be whatever other things. And the Shobhit being the guru who understands the entire real estate market across India, various players, and across, he understands how and what way one can really able to raise a fund. So naturally, to learn and listen from the Shobhit, we'll also have a good idea about our individual business point of view. How do we adopt these ideas into our business? How do we able to generate the funds other than sales and marketing, which of course definitely is there, but the immediate requirement is the immediate fund point of view. The only option is a debt, and the second, the best and the option is of course equity. And the equity point of view, the private equity which is available, and partnering with international player. The only we have seen the large partnership first time in India happening, where our managing committee, young dynamic Gautam, who has been able to successfully do the partnering with Fosun, the large Chinese player, and they've been able to take the things further. And this is something really where for us, it's a really a learning case study for us, how and what way individual developers, young developers to the large developers. These are the new ideas and new thought which we will definitely able to learn in today's session. So we really that the way Dr. Harshul has organized the things, we will be happy to learn, listen and learn the things. I would also be wanting to know how and what way everybody could able to do that thing. Gautam has merged into the large thing, and what are the things, how, what way the international player, they strategize their position. We have our limitation to understand only localized Mumbai and MMR, or maybe India based, but to have the international player look at our business, how they analyze and strategize the things, what are the challenges, and he successfully handled the whole thing, that we would be happy to learn from Gautam today. Welcome to both of you, and welcome to members. Over to Harshul.
Thank you, President sir, for addressing and setting the tone. We are delighted to have the presence of our President-elect, Shri Boman Irani sir, requesting you to share a few words about your thoughts on private equity, your experience. We'll be eager to listen to you.
I think, Harshul, the people we should be hearing is Shobhit and Gautam. Shobhit for the wealth of experience and the number of deals he's done. At the same time with Gautam, to hear about the finer nuances of actually doing a deal and then living with a partner. And maybe in a year's time, then I'll also speak to you all about the
I was just going to say that.
Living with the partner, surviving.
No, you growing. I would like to say, I hope to be speaking about growing with my partners. So go on, Shobit, over to you, I guess.
Thank you. Thank
I
you.
would
Sorry,
I
Harshul.
would I would request I would request our honorable secretary Shri Pritam Chivukla ji to welcome Shobit sir and request Shobit sir to share his thoughts and set the tone for today's topic on private equity. Over to you, Pritam sir.
Yeah, thank you so much, President-elect, and Harshul, all of you. I think Shobit requires no introduction. He's been around as long as I've been around. So we are pre-2005. We are pre-FDI era in real estate. So we know everyone knows Shobit very well, and I'm especially thankful to Gautam, actually, whom we have been pursuing for almost a year now to come on board and do this presentation, but he wanted the entire year to get over to understand how they behave in COVID time also. So I can tell you that much that Gautam has worked very hard on putting a fantastic presentation for the benefit of the audience today. And this couldn't be, anything more than we could ask for Shobit and Gautam to be on the same show. Over to you, Shobit, and after that to Gautam. Thank you so much for all of you.
Thank you, Deepak Bhai, Baman, Pritam, Harshul, for inviting me. When Harshul called me, I was wondering what I'm going to speak on, and things that I've not already shared with you guys. And I know Deepak Bhai spoke a few things, but I can only tell you, there are very few guys who can read plans and balance sheet. And I know Gautam is one of them, right? He's exceptional. He can, and that's why he's got where he's got. So kudos to him. And I'm very keen to hear him. So I'm going to keep my two words really short. Pritam did mention, and he did say that, look, we've been all in the era of pre-2005 when FDI was not allowed. We learned the word private equity starting 2005, and to date, he mentioned billions of dollars has come in. Harshul mentioned it. Even during pandemic, over 1,500 transactions have been done in real estate in so many years, and especially in the last 2-3 years, the number of transactions, the volume is all going up. The big is getting bigger, and money is pouring in. Today's session is more private equity, but before we get to private equity, I think the precursor is that public equity started to come in, first in the office assets, then in residential sector with Lodha getting money, and then doing a follow-up offer as well. We believe that more such companies are sort of moving towards listed equities. And that's what makes private equity very interesting, because for people to gain scale to get to public markets, I think they need pre-IPO funding, which is all private equity. So private equity can come in at several levels. Gautam today, and I'm very excited to hear his presentation. I know after seeing his presentation, I pulled my presentation down saying, today I'm not going to make a presentation, I'm in competition. But from doing a parent company deal or the main holding company deal to doing portfolios to doing asset level, everything is a baby step to an IPO, right? So Gautam has amongst very few people who's done a deal at the holdco level, and it's very interesting. I'm sure there's been immense learning on before and after, and I'd love to hear. I know he's going to talk about it, and I've seen his presentation on how things were before that equity came in and how it has changed and what's the new company looking like. It takes a lot to undo what you had been used to doing, and I think that's what change is all about. And private equity is like that, pre and post, there are lots of changes that happen very subtly in your organization, and unless you're willing to sign up for that change, please don't think about private equity. You will end up fighting with your partner, and if already you don't have more problems, you have one more litigation sitting with you. So guys, you mentally need to be prepared. It's not free money. as opposed to many people thinking that this is free money. This is not free money. Somebody is trusting you to look after his wealth and grow it. Everybody wants a 2x, 3x, 4x return, which I know hasn't been possible because of the markets. But ultimately, like I said, now is the time for residential private equity to come in. I think each year subsequently, we will see larger amounts of money moving into residential real estate rather than offices, because offices are slowing down given work near home, work from home, or don't work at all. So God knows what the truth there is. But on this note, I want to just hand it over to Gautam, saying, Gautam, over to you. We'd love to listen to you, and I'm attentively listening to you on what's been the transformation pre and post private equity day.
So great. Just one, line to the audience. You all can ask your questions. We have a Q&A box, and I would acknowledge the presence of our esteemed managing committee members. We have with us Sunny Bijlani, Prateek Patel, Naman Shah, and Binita Dalal. Warm welcome to all of you all as part of the panelists. And feel free to ask questions after the presentation is over. A warm welcome to all panelists. Over to you, Gautam. We all are extremely eager and the numbers keep growing in audience. Over to you.
Good evening, everyone. Hope everyone is safe and well. Thank you, Baman. Thank you, Harshul. Thank you, Deepak Bhai. Thank you, Shobit, for your generous introduction and setting the tone. Before I start, I must commend MCHI and CREDAI for all the great work they're doing, both on the policy front and for arranging such conversations. Today, I'm going to be sharing with you our encounter with private equity. First of all, I'm really humbled to share this story, especially before all the stalwarts in the room who've created such great legacies. Our story is still in the making, and the outcome is still some time away. Let me start by giving a little background. My father, a third generation dry fruit merchant, started the real estate business in 1985. Over the years, from a single project in Navi Mumbai, the company developed about 45 residential projects, homes that range from 30 lakh to 60 crore. After 30 years, in 2015, we had reached a pipeline of about 10 million square feet. And today, the company is debt-free and moving towards growth. Traditionally, when it came to financing, we followed what most industry players followed. Acquired a project, financed it through pre-sales, kicked off construction, and went to market. Over time, we started relying on institutional debt and project-level equity. But clearly, scaling up was becoming a challenge. 2016 onwards, it was pretty clear that the business had changed completely. It had become like any other capital industry like power and infra. That's when we started our search for equity capital. So initially, we had a couple of discussions with institutions, but things progressed with Fosun, a Fortune 500 company from China with presence in many of the countries. So Fosun has three core businesses: real estate, pharma, and insurance. The real estate business is worth about $35 billion and spread across 7 platforms globally. So Fosun wanted to enter into India because of their first-hand experience of urbanization in China. And I recall Chairman Goh, the founder of Fosun, saying, Westerners missed the China's growth story. We don't want to miss India's growth story. He also said China's industries landscape looked exactly like this 25 years ago, and the next 20 years will be a golden period for India. And I sincerely hope that his words come true. We've all lived through this painful period of 2016 to 2020. It made us realize that we had to organize ourselves internally if we had to weather the external storms. Our house had to be put in order. There was no option. We went through multiple crises, and every blow made us realize the importance of long-term capital and liquidity. So years of appreciation were over. Debt was mounting on the books. Sales were low. With this kind of a situation, obviously profits were melting away. And I remember there was a time where payroll was running behind for months. It was embarrassing to even enter the office daily, to see the faces of the team. And the only thing that kept us going was well-wishers and family who kept saying, hang in there, don't give up, it will be okay. And thankfully, it started becoming okay. If I was to see that what was the biggest attraction for us to have a partner like Fosun, number one was their understanding of the real estate business, the commitment to the Indian market, long-term capital, and their experience in residential, office, retail, and logistics. So it felt like a good match. Uh, so the deal-making phase, this reminds me of a marriage phase. And you know how a roller coaster ride the whole wedding ceremony is. So to attract any strategic player, the first step is to sell the India story. Then it's about pitching the team, the systems, the product, the brand, the track record, and then the growth potential. It took us about 9 months to reach term sheet. Took us 6 months to get in to complete diligence. Took us about 8 months to close documentation. So all in all, 2 years from the first interaction to actual closure. The process was long, nerve-wracking, and it felt like the deal hung in balance at several occasions. So coming on to shareholding, I think before getting into details, I would say let's ask the basic question. Is private equity for everyone? So I think it's situational. It really depends where the company is, where the promoters want to take it. Is growth capital missing? Is the debt becoming unmanageable? Are there liquidity issues for existing projects? Do we want to change the asset mix? So I think the right dilution percentage needs to be figured out on what is your reality, what's your current reality. Also, like Shobit said, you have to be very mindful of one thing. Getting in an institutional partner can significantly change the way you carry out business. The decisions will not be instant. They'll become way more structured. The decision-making process may slow down at first, but if it's managed well over time, can actually become more systematic and automated. And finally, where do you want to take the company? What are you looking for? Is it stability? Is it growth? Or maybe it's exit? So, I mean, it's case, there was a debt situation. Sales were low. Some projects were at early stage, some were at middle stage. We knew if we carried this debt, the profits would melt away. The only way to stop the bleeding was to increase the equity base. And when you're in that fix, when the hole seems large, the only visible solution is make the business large enough so that the hole becomes small. So for us, growth was the key factor. And instead of a small pie, 100% of a small piece of a larger pie looked a little more prudent. So, so we went for a majority stake deal. So, controlling stake, I think there's a lot of fuss around this, and I just want to bring out one factor. I think control is very relative. When business itself is out of control because of markets, even having 100% control on decision making makes no difference to life or to business. Whereas if you give up some control on decision making, and that gives you better control to sail through the storm, then I think you're better off. So instead of the markets deciding your fate, you end up gaining some control over your own destiny. So this is where it's the trade-off. you think you're giving up control, but actually you're gaining control in some sort of way. So I'm not saying give in completely. Even if there is a majority stake, there's still safeguards that you can build. You can build it through minority protection rights. You can build it through board seats. You can build it through day-to-day operational control. You can do it through CEO position, different class of voting shares. So there is stuff that you can build around this. You don't need to be fussed that, oh, I'm losing control. I know I'm going into a little bit of extra details, but I think these are key parts of the deal. And I think these are unavoidable. So valuation is generally one of the mainstay in any equity deal. And how to get to that valuation. So we agreed on valuation at 2 points of time: pre-diligence and post-diligence. And just like any Indian wedding, there's a lot of song and dance before the couple actually gets together and dances. So all this process seems to be complicated, but there is method to the madness. Valuation is just a basic sum of all parts. Project by project, you piece them together and you get the result is pretty easy. When it comes to concluding on cost between each other, I think that's relatively easier. Then it's about, on everything else, it's about their view versus your view. And before diligence stage, I feel, it's best not to chip away too much from the valuation. Keep this buffer for later. And instead, wherever there's a gap, it's best to push this gap to the diligence process. So instead of wasting time and arguing, you're telling a third party, come and verify all these gaps neutrally. You're out of the game for that time. And you try and agree to that number. But valuation post-diligence can be very time consuming. Price never seems fair, especially when you've had a long history with the company. But eventually it boils down to how much both parties really want the deal. And then it just gets done over just one single session. And I know one thing, looking at the final numbers and the value of your shareholding can be very taxing and daunting. But instead of looking at that absolute number, the only positive way to look at it would be how can you multiply that number over a period of time, 3 times, 4 times together, and increase shareholder value over time. I know sometimes, this could be fool's paradise, and I can be completely wrong with this. But this is one way to keep the focus on keeping on adding value and keeping on growing the platform. But I'll be honest here, it's mainly to get some good sleep at night. That, yes, this will grow. Otherwise, there's no way to get around this. Coming on to some of the other sticky issues. Key positions in the new organization becomes quite important. And whether any of these positions will be taken up by promoters. And in a scenario where your position as a CEO or managing director can get taken away, it could affect your shareholding. It could affect your share value. So such a situation needs to be pre-planned. Goes without saying. You better have a prenup agreement. You cannot get into this saying, we'll see to it, we'll see how it goes. Just put it in order so that you know if you get out, what you're getting out with. And I think there are some other key considerations which come up during documentation stage. I won't go into detail. Maybe we can take this for question answers. But let me pick one point, which is the business plan. And I think this remains always a conversation all throughout the deal. What's the business plan? How's it going to look like? But there needs to be an unsaid understanding that post-deal, both parties will work together and prepare a workable solution, which means you may put anything on paper today, but when you get together, you will have to decide how you want to handle the business together. Coming now to the happy moments. Once the deal is done, you're definitely relieved. But if you ask me, the real work on building the platform begins now. Every stakeholder has questions. Bankers, employees, customers, JV partners. So we tried and went out and communicated to all of them a lot more, told them exactly how the deal was, what it's going to do to them, and stuff like that. When the organization was set up, there was a new approval system which came up, new organization design which came up, a new reporting line came up. Daily and weekly meetings changed completely. There were new participants, and reporting meetings were handled in different ways. You got to be okay in accepting and adapting to this change. New information systems came in. You need to be clear that your regular systems have to be intact so that you can share that clearly. Another thing which comes in any cross-border deal is language and gap in knowledge. That does the investor get it? Does he know the business? Or do you know the business enough? And I think that's a stumbling block in any cross-border deal. But I would just say one thing, that I think everyone understands the language of profit, language of efficiency. So it's best to stick to that language. And then all of a sudden you start seeing everything falls in place. So this was more about what happened through the deal process. This is some of the key milestones, what the company has done from August to now. We've finally put the house in order. Now all eyes are set towards growing the platform and taking it to the next step. So I think I've already taken up a lot of time. I'm going to skim through this stuff. We know the real estate story for India. Hopefully this seems to be the end of the down cycle. We hope that we have a long upward cycle from here. From our end, we would like to strengthen our core market and probably plan entry to Pune, Bangalore market through some M&A deals. And over a period of time, start moving towards other asset classes like logistics, office, retail. So that's our plan for now. Incidentally, this reminds me of something my grandfather used to say a lot. And he used to say, "Sar hai, sar salamat, to pagdi hazar." So I just want to make this last statement. Just stay in the game and let's hope we all ride the wave soon. Thank you. Thanks a lot. And thank you so much for giving this opportunity and having this, time from all of y'all to hear my ranting. Thanks a lot.
No, not at all, not at all. It was really a well-made presentation, which summarized actually a lot of hard work that you and your team have put together over the last so many months to get this deal together. Harshul, how do you want to start this? Harshul, are you there?
Yeah, pretty much. There are a couple of questions on the chat box. So we have one of our member, Imran Maknojia, who's asked two questions. I'll just take them up. Was it pure equity or equity in the form of development capital that really came in, from your private equity partner?
So it is pure equity, where there's a structure that there is some part of the amounts which have come in as a completely pure equity. There's no carrying, or a preferred return which we've agreed. So it's not develop. And when we say development capital, yes, this money is supposed to be used primarily for the projects. It's for running the business. It's for running the management fee or whether all the admin fee. It was not for takeout. So it was more towards actually putting the monies into the project. I hope that answers the question.
Yes, and we have a follow-up question as well from Imran. Does the investor consider IPO as an exit, or is completion of the project only the criteria from an exit perspective? So is an IPO a thought process with the private equity partner?
Yes, I think if you were to see it, such large size of capital cannot get the exit or can get their return so quickly unless somebody waits in for 4 years, 5 years. So I think, for any investor, when they're coming with this size of capital, over $100 million, the only way out is to grow the platform and move it towards an IPO. So I think IPO is clearly the way to go, but obviously to reach that point is not so simple. You need to bring the platform to a critical mass. You need to have enough track record in terms of sales, in terms of profitability, in terms of size of platform, which means a new project pipeline. So even though just having an investor together with you doesn't give you a guaranteed chance that you're going to go towards an IPO, but obviously any investor will get his real exit, and plus will want to stay in the business only if the company reaches to the public markets.
Great.
Hi, this is Shobit. I'd like to add two things here. One, somebody asked whether it was development capital. Actually, the right word is growth capital, right? I think what the promoter was in this case looking at was survival and then growth. So if you cut it in two pieces, it is first survive and then grow, right? Unless you grow, there's no point of getting this private equity. So you definitely need growth. And second is when you approach or when you together approach the public market, it is definitely not an exit. It is actually then making your vehicle absolutely permanent. Once you go to the listed market, it is not the exit actually, it's the start of a new journey. The current investor may decide to exit, may not decide to exit. In most cases where you've seen Blackstone and Brookfield listing, they've actually continued in the business. Nobody's exited anything. You may have diluted something, but it is permanent. And that vehicle is now going to remain for years together, like so many other listed companies. I know few that got listed on the first day when the stock market opened are still surviving today, right? So please don't look at public market listing as an exit for somebody else. It's actually now making your business absolutely permanent. And beyond
That's a
your own
great
life.
perspective.
Yeah, and
That's a
beyond your
great perspective.
and beyond your own life, right? It is your vision is to run it for 90 years, 100 years, the company is going to survive. I think Gautam started by saying his great granddad started it, his granddad started it. Now this is a perpetual vehicle, right? So it's a great way to go. I mean, macro tech is now a permanent vehicle, unless they do some goof up. Sorry, that's all that I wanted to say.
Thanks, Shobit. That's a great way of looking at things. Today was a very interesting and encouraging news, which was there where listed companies have, increased their pricing points by at least 10%. This really indicates positive times coming in. We have a question from one of our participant, Parag Kachiji. What is the variation approval matrix in case expenditures or predefined budgets, really shoot up? It's quite a common thing in real estate for budgets to go haywire. So how does the variation approval matrix work?
I guess some things are part of BP and some things are not, or they're not part of your business plan, or they're. So there may be some things which come up all of a sudden and both parties take a hit. But if there are some things which are pre-agreed that should not go out of hand and there are indemnities, then you pay for it. But I think it's the way to handle such surprises as you go along, and you should be willing to take those blows and absorb them if you have to. And sometimes it will only go on your account, sometimes it will go on the platform account. But I think it's best to just keep moving on, and you'll have opportunities ahead to gain this back. I think that's the only way to look at it. Shobit, maybe even you can add something more.
Yeah, so I was going to say, look, I think most of us are used to making our own business plans, nobody to criticize it, nobody to relook at it. And I think Gautam mentioned that you get more organized, you get more structured. Probably the first business plan, you'll have a lot of deviation. The second will have a lot less. Third will have even lesser. So that's the whole purpose of getting somebody, because your governance structure improves. You get into very little detail. You start budgeting for it. You have proper budgets. You have proper variation. Of course, nobody plans for a pandemic, right? So that's outside human control. But what you can control, I think, becomes less and less. Sort of deviations become lower and lower each time you put a structured plan to it. And that's the whole fun and game of doing private equity. Yeah, that your deviations reduce a lot.
Thanks a lot. Speaks a lot about the kind of governance that comes along with private equity. We would also welcome our managing committee members, Samyak, Kunal Cheda. Thanks for joining in. I would at this point open the floor to our panelists to ask questions. President sir, President-elect, Secretary, anyone from the managing committee, please feel free to switch on your videos and ask questions to both our expert speakers, Shri Gautam Ahuja ji as well as Shri Shobhit Agarwal ji.
I have a question. Okay, go ahead.
Shobhit sir wants to ask a question.
I want to ask this question to Gautam. Gautam, you mentioned that at one point you decided to go the private equity way because you rather have a portion of a bigger pie than not have anything at all, or keep 100%, which wasn't very sure where it was headed. How easy was this journey? Because for a deal to take 200 days or 250 days, there must have been so many times when you just thought that you've lost the deal. And what kept you going, and how many such instances happened? I keep saying that, like our old Hindi or mythological saying, each deal has 9 lives, like the cats in the system. So I don't know how many lives you went into in these deals. You wake up one morning and say your deal nahi hoega, and the next day you get in there. So how easy was it?
It was tough, and like you said, I think Shobhit, that every deal has 9 lives, and this is exactly how it happened. From the initial stage, even at the term sheet stage, to the next step, every time we felt that the deal was hanging in balance. And there were points where, and I can give you one example. On the last 10 days of the deal, we had one creditor who went to High Court and filed a suit, and we thought the entire deal is in jeopardy. So till the last 10 days of the deal, we didn't know whether the deal is done. And there were points and moments where maybe it was because of tax diligence, sometimes because of various issues. I mean, the amount of issues that get thrown up, sometimes you don't realize that how much of your history is there in your baggage. And when you start, doing the entire DD, how many things come out. So it was a really nerve-wracking process, and it was almost like a 2 year play. And there are times when your own people, your own employees at times feel that this is really not going to happen. This deal is not happening.
Yeah,
There's so much deal fatigue which sets in after 1 year, 1.5 years. And it's very difficult to keep people together, even to share information from your own team and to keep that exchange going. It becomes very difficult at times. But I guess, if you stay at it, it got done finally.
So guys, the point that I was trying to bring out is that this is a marathon of exercise. Every lap is so difficult, and it gets more difficult towards the end because, obviously there's a lot of baggage and fatigue that you're carrying. It is not easy to execute a private equity, and that too at the holdco level. I think it's just a massive dissection of the firm, and you don't know what comes out of it. So guys, be very, very patient and be extremely focused to reach the end. Don't give up halfway if you've started to go down that path.
Thanks, Shobhit sir and Gautam sir for those insights. I would welcome our panelists to ask questions. Please feel free to directly ask.
I wanted to ask a question.
Great, Samyak.
Yeah, I had a couple of questions. Thanks a lot, Gautam. Yeah, very concise and great presentation, which was very easy to understand. So you've kind of answered this already, but just to sort of pick your brain on this. So obviously this private equity was one option that you had. Even at the initial juncture, was public markets ever an option? And what went through your mind as to why it shouldn't have been done? And going forward, is it that this is going to be a stepping stone for you all in the next 3 to 5 years? Secondly, so even though this is a private equity deal, they do have a sort of a real estate development background. So on the non-financial aspects, so let's say whether it is construction technology or product development or any other aspects, how much value add has this partnership done so far? I know it's too early, but if you could just throw some light on that.
I think two parts of it. Let me first start with the development aspects. So I think synergy is clearly there. The good thing is that they understand residential, they understand office and logistics, which we don't understand. So for us, I think that's going to become a big value add. Even when it comes to resi and just doing our regular projects, they've been able to do cost control, bring out some things which we wouldn't have been able to do. And I'm sorry, Samik, I forgot the first question.
No, so first question was IPO ever in the?
Yeah.
I mean,
Yes,
when you initially started, yeah.
So IPO for I think we were not ready at all for an IPO. I think our backs were against the wall. Liquidity was a challenge, and also I don't think our scale was enough for going for IPO. You definitely need a certain amount of pipeline, and to be able to show that this is going to be an ongoing concern. And anyone any merchant banker is going to see that, does it have 10-year visibility? And if you don't have that 10-year visibility, anyone will say that this business is not self-sustaining. So I think IPO was too early. I would say even today for us, the IPO journey is probably 2 years away. And that too would be after adding up more pipeline, adding up, also creating a track record, having a certain amount of profitability visible. Only then we would get some value or a decent value from the public markets.
Just a small follow-up. So when the deal got finalized, were there any benchmarks set on when you had to go public, or it is completely a non-issue? If you could just throw some light on that.
So there's no timeline fixed for an IPO. We have had basic discussions and put that in place that in 3 years' time we'll try to go towards the public market. But there are no obligations that we have to file we have to do SEBI filings, or we have to move towards public market. That's not been part of the deal, and we were clear that we couldn't put such an obligation upfront because we don't know whether the markets will be right at that point of time, and we couldn't take a risk that if you don't end up going there, then you get a call option or a put option. I don't think we could have borne that kind of a risk.
Great. Thanks a lot.
Thanks, Samyak. Vinita, do you want to share your experience with private equity? You have any questions for our speakers?
No, I don't think I have any questions at all, but I definitely resonate everything that Shobit is asking and Gautam is responding to in terms of an experience and a feeling. So I think everything that has been shared is absolutely perfect. So I don't have any questions on this.
I think last 1-2 questions before we wrap up the session. There's a question by Rituraj Verma-ji. He's saying, how do you handle the exchange risk in the transaction?
So Fosun didn't see this. I think any long-term player is not looking to take this capital back very soon. So if you go to see that way, then the exchange risk doesn't really hit them, because their intent is to stay in the market. So if there is intent to stay in the market, there's no question about hedging the risk. So I think it's that. And I think if the returns are good enough over long periods of time, then I think the hedging risk doesn't really make much of a difference.
Yeah,
maybe Shobit, you can also add some more.
I'll just add here. Look, we are talking about Indian real estate, right? So no matter what happens, you can only be judged on rupee return, right? So you could have made 50% profit and currency would have lost 70%. You'll never make money in dollar returns or whichever currency you're looking at. So no investor that I know will look at anything other than rupee return, because we are earning in rupees and we are investing in rupees. There's no dollars that have come in. It's just the dollar value of that is always looked at in dollar values, but it is always rupees that we get. And that's what matters. So guys, there's no hedging risk required in long-term real estate investments. There's no question on it.
Gautam, one question that I would like to ask is, how easy or difficult was it to convince family members? Any anecdotes that you could share, or conversations with Jagdish sir, or something that you could share with?
So I think Dad was actually the most was the easiest. He was not at all tough. He was so open through the deal, I think. But probably Mom and my wife had way more questions than than probably dad who had. So they had all these questions, like we put down on the CEO position, that what if you get taken out? What if you do something which doesn't work? Then what happens? So I think those fears were the most, and whether they should get involved in the business or no. So I think my father, I'm fortunate to have a person who's been very liberal in letting me do what I want to do, but definitely other family members were having a lot of fears.
We really appreciate your candid and personal experiences shared. I think one last question, probably, if it's there, or else I'll request our Honorable Secretary, Shri Pritam Chivukla ji, to propose a formal vote of thanks. And I would go on record and say that this has been one of the only session where through and through the session, the attendance, even during Q&A, has so that speaks a lot about the kind of content that has been delivered, for which we are really thankful. Pritam bhai, over to you to propose a formal vote of thanks.
Yes, thank you, Harshul. Thank you, everyone, for being here. Shobit, thank you for taking a call on the last moment. As always, thanks so much. Gautam, thank you so much. I think we've been very grateful that you took time out and put this wonderful presentation. Amit Joshi, for helping Gautam out from your team. Thank you so much. All my co-panelists as well as managing committee members. We'll be very happy to take any further questions that will come offline and answer them, or send to Gautam or Shobit offline. We'll be sending the presentation as well as the video to all the members of MCHI for viewing them. Gautam, I'm telling you, a lot of people who couldn't attend at 4:30 have sent me messages for the video. We normally have this on a Saturday at 11 o'clock or a evening, but a lot of people who couldn't attend. So at least there are another 15-20 more people who have asked for this video. So it's going to be a great hit. Thank you so much. We hope to be in touch with you as you go forward, and we hope to see you more active in the MCHI forums. President, any further conclusion, or can we close for today? I think he's on another call. So thank you so much, everyone.
Thank you, Pritam. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you, Pritam.
And thank you for the time.
And Gautam, wonderful presentation. Thank you.
All the best, Gautam.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thanks, Bhavan. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you so much, everyone.